I'm Laura Armstrong, and I'm presenting my PowerPoint about the practical uses of sensory illusions. Okay, so this is an NPC pair, something that we use throughout our daily lives. But did you know that it relies on sensory illusions to work? Sensory illusions are all around us in our daily lives, and to most people, we have fond memories of looking at books of illusions or listening to seashells. And to most people, that's all sensory illusions are, a game. However, they have practical uses as well. So, history of illusions. Sensory illusions have been studied since Aristotle. A famous quote from him, dating back to 350 BC, is that our senses can be trusted, but they can be easily fooled. And he, in fact, discovered the motion after effect illusion, which is experienced after looking at something moving for more than 10 seconds, and then looking at something stationary. The stationary object appears to move in the opposite direction to the original stimulus. Intellectual studies. So, illusions were particularly studied in the 19th century. Schools of scientists who studied perception and created simple illusions to understand the mind, how the mind perceives patterns and shapes. The Ebbinghaus illusion, which we saw on this, reveals that our brains make judgments about size based on the size of adjacent objects. In fact, the two circles you saw in there were the same size. They appear different to the eye. They also discovered the Ponzo illusion, which, as shown here, illustrates the context and illustrates the important context to the foundation of depth perception, because again, the two lines are the exact same size. Sensory illusions involve audiovisual entertainment. So audiovisual entertainment relies a lot on sensory illusions. MP3 players, which we talked about earlier, rely on the lossy audio compression, where parts of the sound are deleted in order to shrink the file, but make it still sound the same. Because what lossy audio compression is where somebody deletes inaudible sounds and our brains fill in the gaps. And then 3D glasses work because our eyes, each of our eyes sees a different image, and then they create one image out of those two. So with 3D glasses, one eye sees the red part, and the other side sees the blue, and they join together to make an image with depth. And actually, all animated movies use sensory illusion because they're simply a bunch of different images with minuscule changes that have been flipped through very quickly to make it seem like they're moving to our brains. So this is sensory illusions in art. So 1 point and 2 point perspective. 1 point and 2 point perspective is how painters create depth. They choose a horizon line and a vanishing point on the horizon line, and they slant all of the objects in this drawing to point towards the vanishing point, making it look as if they're farther away. There's also forged perspective, which is used to make something appear bigger or smaller through the use of scaled objects. This is illustrated in the Statue of Liberty and Michelangelo's David. They both use this technique. And it's also used to hide symbolism, like the painting The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein the Younger, which we saw over here, which has the image of a distorted skull in there that only appears when you turn it at a certain angle. 3D pavement art. The 3D pavement art is a special type of art in illusions. It started in 1982 in Italy, and it combines classical street art with a potent understanding of illusions to create works of art that have captivated people's imaginations as a way to bend reality, and the phenomenon has spread all over the world. Counter-argument. So the counter-argument can be made that that all of these examples that have been listed so far were still forms of entertainment and not strictly necessary for advancement. However, there are other uses of sensory illusions, such as creating futuristic light bulbs that light turns off for 13% of the time, but that's still perceived to be on. And it also is useful for reducing traffic jams. So the importance of understanding sensory illusions. Sensory illusions allow forays into new forms of entertainment, and it allows people to get an understanding of how our brains perceive the world around us. This is summed up by a quote from Sense and Sensibility, author Richard Axel, neuroscientist and recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Finally, the problem of perception necessarily involves an understanding of how sensory input is ultimately transferred to meaningful neural output. So the solution that I've determined is to put more funding into researchers who are studying sensory illusions and how our brains perceive the world around us, as well as into practical uses which could raise the standard of living. The limitations of my previously stated solution are that it would be difficult to convince lawmakers to allot more money to the researchers, and also that not many scientists are necessarily interested in this specific field of research.
All right. Let's pull up the questions.
So what information did you need before you began your research? And how did that information shape your research?
Okay, so some pieces of information I needed before I began my research was, of course, what I was interested on based off of the sources of the stimulus material, because I was looking through them to try to look at themes between at least two or more of the articles. And one thing that I noticed was it talked a lot about how our brains perceive the world around us based on our senses, and that made me think of sensory illusions. And as I was researching into sensory illusions, I realized that they had a lot more practical uses than I previously thought. That they weren't just a fun little game. So I thought it'd be cool to make a PowerPoint about it.
Okay. So my next question is, how did you use the conclusions and questions? How does your conclusion respond to any of the other research or sources you examined?
My conclusion responds at least partially to extrasensory, because they were also focused on learning how our brain, in the article Extrasensory, they also put focus on learning how our brains perceive the world around us. So those were scientists interested in that. However, they looked at it from a slightly different perspective, as using sensors to enhance our perception instead of just merely understanding it.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Laura.